You awaken to a soft, pale light filtering through lace curtains, drifting like motes in a warm glow. The room is hushed, as though everyone but you has paused to savour the tranquility of dawn. Above, the plaster ceiling is painted in ivory and muted rose, its intricate flourishes and floral motifs a testament to artisans long ago. Your four-poster bed stands at the centre, its canopy of fine muslin draped lightly overhead. Beneath you, the linens, crisp, embroidered with tiny forget-me-nots, offer a comforting embrace. A gentle crackle from the hearth reminds you that the fire has already been kindled. You lie still a moment longer, inhaling the faint scent of lavender from the sachet tucked beneath your pillow. A measured knock at the door sounds soft and precise. You murmur, "Enter," and the door opens to reveal your maid, her starched linen cap neat, her dark hair pinned away from her face. She curtsies with practised grace, then moves to draw back the lace curtains fully, allowing morning light to pour in. The chamber brightens in an instant, golden rays sweeping across the polished oak floorboards. You sit up slowly, brushing a stray curl from your forehead as warmth seeps into your cheeks. The maid crosses to the hearth and adds a small log. The flames burst to life, casting dancing shadows across the carved mouldings and gilded mirror above. She returns, offering you her hand. You slip from beneath the coverlets, feeling the floor's coolness beneath your slippers. She drapes a soft muslin dressing robe of dove grey around your shoulders. Its fabric, embroidered with pale blue forget-me-nots, is gentle against your skin. Together you move to the washstand. A porcelain jug of warm water, infused with lavender sprigs from the garden, trembles with steam as she pours it into a basin. You lift a fine linen cloth, monogrammed with your initials in delicate blue thread, and press it to your cheeks, the warmth awakening you fully. Your skin pricks with a pleasant tingle as she next takes up a boar bristle brush with a polished mahogany handle. Each stroke releases a faint sheen, coaxing out the softness hidden within your hair. Stray waves fall forward, and she tucks each one behind your ears with gentle fingers. Dressing follows. You step into a plain linen chemise, its cool fabric whispering against your arms as the maid guides you into the sleeves. Next, she secures your stays, modest but well constructed, laced with pale ribbons that cinch your waist and support your posture. With each pull of the ribbons, you draw a steady breath, feeling the gentle pressure shape your silhouette as you stand straighter. 2 petticoats follow, one quilted with cotton batting to ward off any lingering chill, the other of fine linen starched and crisp to give your gown its graceful shape. The layers slide over your feet, brushing the tops of your slippers as you settle them in place. At last, the morning gown emerges, a flowing robe of dove-grey muslin, embroidered along the hem, and cuffs with silver thread sprays of ivy. A ribbon of sky blue encircles the high waist, tied in a neat bow at your back. You slip into it with the maid's assistance, the gown's weight settling smoothly around you like a gentle wave. She arranges the fold so that the embroidery aligns in perfect lines down the skirt, and adjust the ribbon until it sits just below your bust. When she steps back, you regard yourself in the cheval mirror, your reflection bathed in the soft glow of morning. Composed, elegant, every seam and seamstress's stitch in place. Your reticule, small and supple, made of soft leather embroidered to match your gown, awaits on a small dressing table. Inside you place a folded linen handkerchief, a silver comb, and a sachet of dried lavender, ensuring each rests in its proper corner. A cameo brooch, the soft white of its shell set against black resin, pins at your neckline, signifying lineage and quiet dignity. Finally you lift the bonnet, pale straw with sky blue ribbons, positioning it atop your coiffed hair and fastening the long ribbons under your chin in a neat knot. Leaving your bedchamber, you descend a short corridor lined with family portraits. Stern ancestors in powdered wigs and ruffled cravats gaze down, their painted eyes seeming to acknowledge your passage. The floorboards here are polished to a mellow sheen, and you step lightly, your slippers silent against wood. At the corridor's end, a pair of double doors stand slightly ajar, hinting at the next chamber. You push the double doors open and step into a small breakfast alcove, an intimate space just off the main morning room. The walls here are pale, trimmed with white wainscoting, and a single window overlooks the courtyard slate tiles. A low walnut table is set for one, a porcelain teapot, its spout still steaming faintly, a plate of warm bread rolls, a dish of churned butter shaped into small petals, and a pot of golden gooseberry jam. A slender silver knife rests on a folded linen napkin beside the plate. The simple wooden chair, its cushion of dove-grey silk flatter than the settees downstairs, waits in quiet invitation. You step forward and place your reticule on the table's corner, feeling its gentle weight against your skirt. The maid offers a slight curtsy, then pours a cup of Darjeeling. Steam curls in a pale ribbon as you lift the cup to your lips. The tea's floral aroma warms your senses. You break a roll in half, its crumb yielding in your fingers, and spread a thin layer of butter before adding a spoonful of gooseberry jam. Each bite is measured and deliberate. The butter rich and creamy, the jam tart and bright. A perfect morning alchemy. Outside the alcove's window, the courtyard lies still. Potted roses heavy with buds. A fountain stone cold until later. A gardener paws beside a trellis that will soon bear blooms. But for now, the sight is static. A backdrop for your quiet breakfast. You sip the last of your tea, its gentle warmth lingering on your tongue, and set the cup aside with a soft clink. Chewing the final morsel of roll, you let the room's calm settle around you. Your gaze drifts to a small writing desk against the opposite wall. On its polished surface rest 3 letters, bound together by pale blue ribbon, seals of rose, ivory and green wax still intact. They lie in patient waiting. You rise from the chair, smoothing your skirts, and step closer. The letters, tied so neatly, promise news from Bath and beyond. A soft excitement flutters in your chest, though you know the proper setting to open them lies deeper within the house. With that thought, you cross the alcove and step through another pair of doors into the larger morning room. The double doors close softly behind you, leaving the alcove's hush behind. The morning room awaits, bright, calm, ready for the day's next chapter. You return to the morning room once more, drawn by the letters you left on the desk. The scent of tea still lingers in the air, now cool in its pot. Your cheeks are flushed from the fresh air, and your gloves rest on the writing desk. The stack of correspondence awaits patiently, sealed with wax in shades of rose, ivory and soft green. The morning room glows with gentle sunlight. Pale walls trimmed in white wainscoting reflect rays streaming through tall windows, which stand open onto the courtyard below. Ivy climbs the brick walls outside, dotted with tiny white blossoms that tremble in a light breeze. Inside, 2 dove-grey settees flank the hearth, whose embers have cooled to glowing coals. A gilded mirror above the mantel reflects the polished walnut of the writing desk. At one end, a silver tray sits on a sideboard. A porcelain teapot, now empty, rests upon a small flame stand. On the same tray, a plate of warm bread rolls, a dish of butter, and a pot of gooseberry jam await your attention. You cross the parquet floor in measured steps and take a seat in a chair by the window. A maid appears silently at your side, refilling the teapot with fresh lapsang souchong. Its smoky fragrance drifts upward as she pours a cup of the dark tea, the liquid shimmering in your porcelain cup. You lift it to your lips, savouring the warmth that spreads into your chest. Each sip carries a gentle smokiness that contrasts pleasantly with the morning's floral scents. Beside the silver tray is a small assortment of treats: almond macaroons dusted with fine sugar, lemon friands iced to a pale glaze, and tiny pastries filled with whipped cream and fresh strawberries. You select a lemon friand, its texture soft, yielding to your teeth, its citrus glaze bright against the warmth of your tea. A second helping of petite fours follows, each bite a quiet pleasure. The maid stands at ease a respectful distance away, waiting should you require anything more. As you eat, your gaze drifts to the courtyard. Slate tiles warmed by the sun, a single rosebud unfurling on a potted bush, and a gardener hunched over a flower bed at the far edge. The world beyond these walls stirs in slow motion. A stable boy leads a horse to water. A bookseller arranges the volumes near a gate. The distant echo of a carriage on cobbles. Each scene remains at a quiet remove, a backdrop to your calm breakfast. When your second cup of tea is nearly finished, you set the cup aside and rise, smoothing your gown skirt. The warmth of the morning room has seeped into your bones, and you feel ready to complete your correspondence. You step to the writing desk, where the 3 letters await. Unwrapping the pale blue ribbon, you break the rose wax seal on the first envelope, revealing an invitation to a private musicale at the Assembly Rooms next week. The penmanship is elegant, each letter slanted with care. You read it aloud softly for yourself. The date, the time, and the request to arrive in your finest muslin for an evening of harpsichord and select company. A faint smile touches your lips at the thought of candlelit music and the rustle of silk gowns. Next you lift the second letter, its seal ivory. As you break it, a faint scent of lilacs drifts up. Your friend from London writes of new pastel prints imported from France, delicate slippers cut low at the ankle, and bonnets trimmed with ribbons so fine they might float on the breeze. She inquires after your health, and hopes the bath waters have done their magic. You set the letter aside for reply, imagining lavender-infused ink flowing from your quill. The third envelope, waxed in soft green, bears a handwritten note reminding you of Mrs. Alford's cotillion at her townhouse. The invitation advises that each guest bring customary dance cards. White satin slippers and gloves reaching past the elbow are essential. You imagine the spacious drawing room, dimly lit by chandeliers, the polished floor reflecting swirls of orb-hemmed gowns. Your pulse quickens at the thought of measured steps to a violin strains. You place the final note face down and lean back in your chair, letting the morning room calm wash over you. Outside, the sunlight warms the courtyard further, a breeze stirring the ivy's blossoms. The letters lie open at your elbow, their promises lingering. You rise and gather them, tucking the pale blue ribbon around the stack once more, and slipping them into your reticule. The weight of them is reassuring, a companion to whatever the day might hold. With the letters safely secured, you move to a small buffet near the hearth. A covered dish reveals a wedge of fresh honeycomb, its golden cells glinting in the light. You break off a corner. The honey's sweetness blooms on your tongue, rich and floral like the countryside beyond Bath's walls. A goblet of cool spring water stands nearby. You lift it and let the refreshment wash the honey's richness away, each sip bracing and pure. Completing this final indulgence, you rise and cross to the double doors. The morning room's hush follows you as you step outside into a quiet corridor. The sun is higher now, casting long, warm shadows across polished floors. Portraits line the hallway, ancestors in powdered wigs and fine lace, watching your passage with painted eyes. You descend a short flight of stairs, the hush broken only by your slipper's muted echo. Reaching the front door, you pause for a moment, inhaling a breath of both polished wood and the promise of fresh air. A final glance up at the morning room's tall windows, then you step through, closing the door softly behind you. You step onto the cobblestones of Bath's bustling streets, the morning sun illuminating the pale stone façades of Georgian terraces. The air carries the mingled scents of fresh bread from a nearby bakery and the faint sulphur tang wafting upward from the pump room. Ahead, the grand arches of the circus invite your gaze, while to your right, the gentle hum of Bath Abbey's bells drifts on the breeze. You pause at the bakery's open door, drawn by the aroma of warm dough and crackling crusts. Inside, rows of loaves, brown, white and multi-grain, rest on wooden racks, their crust ranging from deep mahogany to golden brown. A baker, apron dusted with flour, lifts a tray of rolls, offering you one still steaming. You cradle it between elegant gloves, feeling its warmth seep through. Breaking it open reveals a tender, buttery crumb that yields with a soft sigh. The scent is sweet and comforting, and you tactfully remove a small bite to savour before placing the rest gently into your reticule. its warmth nestling against your gloves as you step back into the street. Stepping into sunlight, you adjust your shawl and follow the gentle incline toward the pump room. Visitors cluster at the marble steps that rise like a small amphitheatre, each holding a delicate fluted glass. The brass spigot gleams under the morning light as each person fills their glass with tepid, sulphurous water. You wait patiently, admiring the polished stones beneath your boots and the pattern of footsteps worn into the marble over centuries. When it is your turn, you fill your glass and lift it to your lips, savouring the faint metallic tang. Steam curls around your words as you exchange polite nods with those nearby, before setting the glass aside and continuing on your way. Crossing the street, you approach the circus, its circular green framed by 3-storey townhouses of pale Bath stone. Each façade reflects the next in perfect symmetry. Bow windows on the ground floor, slender columns flanking dark panelled doors, and fan lights above, capturing stray rays of sunlight. The trimmed lawn at the centre is dotted with children chasing each other's shadows under the bright sky. On the north side, a vendor wheels a cart laden with gingerbread lozenges, candied and arranged in small jars. You purchase a single lozenge, its sweet spice lingering, and allow the scene's harmony to fill your senses before moving onward. Your route takes you along Brock Street, where stately iron railings and polished brass lion head knockers guard each doorway. The knockers gleam in the sun, reflecting the gentle movement of passing clouds. A uniformed footman stands ready at one entrance, holding a silver tray, awaiting instructions from his mistress. You offer a polite nod, and he inclines his head before resuming his vigil. The rhythmic pattern of columns and windows along the street soothes you, offering a momentary respite. Arriving at Queen Square, you step onto red gravel that crunches softly beneath your shoes. A gardener kneels beside a rose bed, snipping stray stems from a robust bush of crimson blooms that seem to glow against the pale stone terraces. Fragrant petals drift gently to the ground, carried by the faintest gust of wind. You inhale a breath scented with rose and grass, the freshness invigorating your senses. Beyond the square's low wall, you glimpse the marketplace, already alive with activity. In the marketplace, orderly rows of stalls stand beneath linen awnings, each offering fresh produce, meats and flowers. Baskets of cherries lie like jewels, their skins glinting under the sun. You choose a small basket, the fruit's weight reassuring in your gloved hand. A single cherry pops into your mouth, its tart sweetness bursts on your tongue, the juice momentarily brightening the morning's calm. Nearby, a fishmonger's stall showcases gleaming trout on crushed ice. You commission a pair for tonight's supper, tucking the order slip into your reticule alongside the cherries and bread. Across from the fish, a flower stall brightens the market. Bouquets of roses, lavender, and wildflowers stand tied with twine. You select a small bunch of lavender, its purple spikes soft beneath your fingers. The stall-keeper wraps them in brown paper, and you place them gently atop the fish and bread in your reticule, ensuring they do not wilt. The mingled aromas, cherry sweetness, fish brine, and floral perfume entwine as you continue deeper into the market. At the northern edge, the melody of a fiddler and flautist weaves through the clamour. Their bright waltz contrasts with the vendors' calls and the murmur of haggling customers. You drop a penny into their hat, and they play on with radiant smiles as though your presence were a welcome gift. Allowing their music to accompany you, you turn toward Pulteney Bridge. On the bridge, each stone arch is reflected in the Avon's clear waters below. You lean on the stone balustrade, watching a small barge drift past, its laden logs tapping lightly against the hull as it slips under the final arch. The river's gentle flow sends ripples outward, catching sunlight in dancing sparks. You resist leaning further, knowing your gown's hem could catch on the balustrade, yet you watch until the barge and its crew disappear behind the far bank. Crossing the remainder of the bridge, you follow a path shaded by willows whose long branches trail in the water. The Avon's slow current mirrors the sky's pale blue, and the distant laughter of children playing on a moored houseboat reaches your ears. You glance at the family on board, a mother arranging bowls on a small table, a child reaching to drop crumbs for nearby swans, and a father adjusting a simple sail. Their laughter drifts toward you, and though a momentary envy flickers, you remind yourself of your own duties and entitlements. The path curves upward toward Bathwick Hill. The ascent is gentle, each step revealing more of the city's honey-coloured rooftops. When you reach the summit, the panorama unfolds like a living tapestry. Bath Abbey's spire rises amid undulating terraces, while distant hills fade into soft green gradients. A low stone bench, carved simply from local rock, offers a place to rest. You settle there, placing your reticule beside you, and withdraw the warm roll. You break off a piece, its crumb still yielding, and follow with a cherry, its juice a sweet burst against your palate. A gentle breeze stirs your hair as church bells toll softly, and you close your eyes, letting Bath's vista imprint itself upon your memory. After a few moments you rise, brushing a stray bit of lint from your gown. You descend via a narrow footpath that winds through bracken and wildflowers, guiding you toward Henrietta Park. Entering the park, gravel paths curve under young elm trees whose leaves rustle overhead. You pause by a shallow pond rimmed with water lilies, ducks drifting across its glassy surface. A fountain at the pond's centre sprays a gentle mist, each droplet shimmering like tiny gems before falling back into the basin below. You lean against the pond's edge, allowing the fountain's steady murmur to lull your senses into calm mood. Seated on a nearby bench, you let the afternoon sun warm your shoulders as you observe passers-by strolling in pairs or pausing to read beneath shaded trees. The horse's clip-clop on a distant carriage path punctuates the park's gentle hush. Remembering your errands, you retrieve a small sachet of chamomile blossoms purchased earlier. Inhaling its soothing scent, you press it lightly to your wrist, the sweet herb aroma reminding you of restful nights to come. Rising, you follow a gravel lane that curves upward, leading back toward the city's edge. Each step brings Bath's stately crescents and terraces into view once more, their pale stone glowing under the late afternoon sun. The scent of freshly baked bread and roasting meat drifts from a nearby bakery, mingling with the faint smoke of a tavern hearth. You breathe deeply, letting the aroma guide your path. Approaching the narrow lane of your lodging, stone buildings rise on either side, their windows reflecting the sun's final rays. A gentle hush falls as you step onto the last stretch of cobbles, the distant hum of traffic fading behind you. You reach for the door's brass knocker, its cool surface worn smooth by countless hands, and lift it once. Inside, a cool hush and soft candlelight greet you as you close the door, ascending the short staircase to your chamber. Within your room, you place the day's tokens, a sprig of lavender, the remaining cherries, and a slender loaf of bread on a side table. The lavender's sweet fragrance fills the air, while the cherry's bright hue and the bread's rustic warmth stand as tangible mementos of your morning. You smooth your skirt, ensuring every fold falls neatly, and drape your shawl over a nearby chair. From the window, Bath's rooftops glow softly, the spire of Bath Abbey standing sentinel amid the city's evening hush. Ahead, the bandstand concert will soon begin in Sydney Gardens, and later the assembly rooms await for the upcoming musicale. But for now, you stand at the window, letting Bath's gentle rhythms settle within you as you gather yourself for the next chapter of your day. You enter Sydney Gardens, greeted by winding gravel paths, blossoming trees and the sound of a small fountain. The early morning light filters through the foliage, casting dappled patterns on the path. Birds chirp overhead, and a gentle breeze carries the faint scent of lavender and freshly cut grass. Alongside the main entrance, wrought iron gates stand open, their intricate scrollwork inviting you inside. Stepping beyond the gate, you feel the hush of the garden envelop you. The gravel crunches softly beneath your shoes as you follow the main path, bordered by neatly trimmed boxwood hedges. Tulips and daffodils crowd the flower beds, their bright colours lifting your spirits. You pause by a small pond fed by a stone fountain, watching ripples spread across its surface when a single drop of water falls from the statue above. Continuing your walk, you encounter the grotto, a rocky alcove constructed of rough limestone. Inside, the air is cooler, and water trickles from hidden spouts, creating a gentle, soothing murmur. You step into the shade, running your fingertips over the moss-covered stones. Patches of fern and small wildflowers cling to crevices, their delicate fronds brushing against your fingers. The grotto's design feels both wild and carefully arranged, a quiet refuge within the garden. Walking on, you notice a 10-pin bowling green where a few gentlemen practice their rolls. The polished wood of the pins glints in the sun, and you watch as one man steps confidently, rolling the ball with a smooth practice motion. The pins scatter with a satisfying clatter, and he nods to his companions who offer quiet applause. You smile at the scene, appreciating how sport and leisure find a place even in this tranquil setting. You follow a curved path that leads toward the iron bandstand, but before reaching it, you stop at a shaded bench beneath a blossoming cherry tree. Petals drift down like pale pink snow as you settle onto the bench, allowing yourself a moment of stillness. The air here feels alive with colour, the pale green of new leaves, the soft pink of blossoms, and the deep brown of aged bark. You close your eyes, listening to the gentle drip of water from the nearby fountain and the distant hum of conversation carried on the breeze. Rising from the bench, you recognise the bandstand ahead, a circular structure with a domed roof supported by slender columns. The paint has chipped in places, but it remains sturdy and elegant. Delicate scrollwork of vines and leaves adorns each column, and a simple plaque indicates the bandstand's construction date. The wooden floorboards feel warm underfoot as you step onto the platform, choosing a spot near the edge to observe. Around the bandstand, garden paths converge and visitors gather, some in the small clusters chatting softly, others seated quietly on benches awaiting the music. You check your reticule to ensure you carry a fresh handkerchief and a small fan, anticipating the sun's strength later in the day. The air is already warm, and the bandstand's slight elevation promises a gentle breeze that might drift across the lawn. Moments later, a musician approaches carrying a flute case. He's followed by a violinist who cradles her instrument under one arm, and a cellist whose bow case protrudes from under his coat. Each steps onto the bandstand with quiet grace, arranging their music stands and instruments. You notice the violinist's frock, pale green silk trimmed with lace, and the cellist's coat, charcoal wool with brass buttons that catch the light. They exchange polite nods before seating themselves and beginning to tune. The flautist raises her silver instrument, adjusting its head joint before playing a single high note that rings clearly across the gardens. The violinist follows with a few bars on the peg, coaxing a warm tone, and the cellist tests his lower register, the deep resonance vibrating through the wooden floor. As they finish tuning, a hush falls over the garden. Even distant conversations soften, and the only audible sound besides birdsong is the faint trickle from the fountain nearby. You close your eyes briefly, inhale the mingled sense of blooming flowers and fresh earth, and let anticipation build. When the flautist raises her instrument to begin the first soft notes of a minuet, you open your eyes and allow the music to carry you. Each note drifts on the warm air, rippling outward until it weaves through every path and bench in the garden. The violinist's bow glides smoothly across the strings, and the cellist's deep notes provide a gentle foundation, as though inviting you to rest in the moment. As you listen, you let your thoughts wander, recalling last evening's candlelit supper, picturing tomorrow's assembly room's visit, imagining the gentle curves of the river below. The music seems to echo each thought, rising and falling like a comforting lullaby. You feel the day's worries slip away, replaced by the simple beauty of sound and sight. When the piece concludes, soft applause ripples across the lawn. The musicians smile at one another, bowing their heads in modest thanks. You offer your own polite clap before rising from your seat in readiness to explore the garden further. The next path leads you to a small herb garden, where lavender, chamomile and sage grow in neat rows. A gardener kneels beside the lavender, cutting a bundle to add to drying racks. You inhale deeply, allowing the soothing fragrance to fill your senses. After pausing to admire a patch of daisies, you continue along a path leading to a small pond rimmed with water lilies. ducks drift across its glassy surface, quacking softly as they search for breadcrumbs dropped by passing children. A fountain in the centre sprays a gentle mist, each droplet catching sunlight like tiny gems before falling back into the basin below. You lean against the pond's stone edge, watching the play of light and water. Seated on a nearby bench, you let the afternoon sun warm your shoulders as you observe visitors strolling through the park, some beneath parasols, others shaded by broad-brimmed bonnets. The gentle rustle of leaves overhead and the distant melody from the bandstand combine to create a serene backdrop. A gentle breeze stirs your gown's hem, and you allow a contented smile to spread across your face. Finishing a small flask of iced lemonade brought from a nearby cart, you set the empty glass on a stone ledge and rise to walk toward the garden's exit. The lilies and herbs behind you merge into a tapestry of green and white, a reminder of the life that thrives under careful cultivation. You follow a gently winding path back toward the wrought iron gate, pausing once more under an ancient oak whose branches seem to protect the garden like a silent sentinel. Before departing, you notice a sundial perched on a stone pedestal beside a cluster of lavender. The bronze gnomon casts a precise shadow across carved numerals, and you trace the etched lines with your gloved fingertip. Nearby, bees hover among the lavender blooms, their gentle buzz blending with the rustle of leaves overhead. You lean in to inhale the floral scent, letting it soothe your mind before continuing onward. As you pass a row of neatly trimmed hedges, you glimpse a family seated beneath an elder tree. The mother reads aloud from a small book, her voice soft yet clear. The children listen intently, their laughter bubbling when she reaches a particularly amusing passage. You pause to observe the scene, noting how the garden's calm provides a perfect backdrop for such tender moments. A wandering breeze carries the faint aroma of rose and fresh earth, intertwining with the mother's words in a moment of quiet grace. Nearing the pond once more, you pause at a wooden table where a simple pitcher of iced spring water stands alongside delicate pewter cups. You lift a cup, feeling the coolness seep through your fingers as you take a long, refreshing drink. The pure water cleanses your palate, leaving you ready for whatever the remainder of the day may bring. With renewed energy, you follow a final winding path toward the wrought iron gate. The late afternoon sun warms your face as you step through, carrying the peace of Sydney Gardens in your heart. You approach the central bandstand as the local ensemble tunes, a flautist, violinist, and cellist, each in crisply laced coats and modest frocks. The light glints off the polished brass of the flute, while the violinist adjusts her chin rest and plucks a string to test its tension. The cellist, seated with a casual poise, runs a scale under his breath, eyes darting over the music score pinned in place by silver clips. Around the bandstand, groups of visitors are gathering, some reclining on woolen picnic blankets, others standing in shaded patches beneath tall sycamores. Gentle clinks of china teacups drift through the air from a nearby refreshment table, where young attendants in waistcoats and aprons serve cool lemonade and sugared almonds. You find a place on a low wooden bench near the front. From here, you can see the delicate carvings on the flautist's case, and the gentle sway of the violinist's skirts as she shifts her stance. The musicians give a nod to one another, and the flautist begins. A bright trill escapes her instrument, floating like a silver thread through the hush of the garden. The violin joins in, soft at first, like a whisper, then stronger, wrapping around the flute in dancing harmony. The cello's low tones swell beneath them, warm and earthy. The melody carries over the trimmed hedges and flower beds, over the heads of listeners leaning forward in rapt attention. A couple stands just behind you, the gentleman gently rotating a parasol over his companion's shoulder to shield her from the sun. A little further along, an elderly woman closes her eyes with a serene expression, her gloved hands resting on a wicker basket. You feel the gentle thrum of the cello through the bench beneath you, and allow yourself to lean back, relaxing into the rhythm. The composition shifts into a slow waltz, and a few couples rise to their feet, stepping cautiously into the open grass before the bandstand. With measured grace, they begin to turn, step, step, glide, marking the beat with soft footfalls. One woman's gown of lilac silk with a fine lace hem catches the sunlight with each rotation, flashing like the wings of a moth. Her partner leads with care, his boots leaving pale impressions in the flattened grass. You smile as you watch them, comforted by the peaceful simplicity of their movement. As the piece comes to a close, applause rises from the scattered gathering. Polite clapping, soft and measured, echoes gently around the garden. The musicians bow, the cellist rising stiffly before sitting again with a quiet chuckle at his own effort. Then, with a shared glance, they begin again, this time with a rustic tune, faster, jauntier, causing a ripple of laughter and tapping toes among the audience. While the new melody plays, your attention shifts briefly to the refreshment area. A neatly dressed boy carries a tray of biscuits and light sponge cakes, weaving through the garden with the nimble awareness of someone used to avoiding crinolines and trailing parasols. You catch his eye, and with a small nod he offers you a cake. You accept it with thanks, its lemon glaze glinting in the sunlight. A bite reveals a delicate texture, fresh and buttery, the citrus cutting cleanly through the warmth of the afternoon. The music swells once more. This time the violin takes the lead, its melody sweet and clear, supported gently by the flute's high notes and the cello's grounding depth. The musicians play without showiness or flourish, their eyes focused but their expressions open and soft. Around you, conversation ebbs and flows. Some attendees whisper to one another between movements, others remain still, eyes closed, lost in thought or memory. A sudden gust of wind lifts the hem of your gown and sends a flurry of leaves skittering across the lawn. One lands on your lap, a golden-brown oak leaf, already tinged with early signs of autumn. You hold it briefly, its dry veins tickling your palm, before letting it drift to the ground. Above, the sky remains clear, a soft blue canvas scattered with slow-moving clouds. As the concert continues, a new group of listeners arrives from the direction of the main gates. You hear the rustle of silk skirts and the clicking of boot heels against the path. A lady in a wide lavender hat takes a seat near you, fanning herself in slow arcs while adjusting her lace gloves. Her eyes fix on the musicians and she does not speak, but her foot taps quietly in time with the cello. Eventually the ensemble announces the final piece, a traditional English folk song arranged for their trio. The flute picks up the opening line, airy and bright, soon joined by the cello's rhythmic pulses. The violin weaves in last, echoing the melody with gentle insistence. The song is familiar, and a few listeners softly hum along, their voices low and warm. The garden feels like a single shared breath. No division, no expectation, just stillness and sound. When the last note fades, silence follows, a moment suspended before the applause returns. This time it is more enthusiastic. The performers smile and bow deeply. A few people stand to clap, others remain seated, offering their thanks with polite gestures and admiring glances. You feel a quiet gratitude for the gift of their music. As the musicians pack away their instruments, the crowd begins to disperse. Some make their way toward the refreshment tables, others toward the open paths of the garden. You rise slowly, brushing the crumbs from your gown and folding your hands at your waist. The afternoon has passed gently, but the day is far from over. You follow the path away from the bandstand, walking alongside a row of flowering shrubs. The air still carries the echo of music, though now mingled with birdsong and distant laughter. The gravel crunches softly beneath your steps, and you pass a pair of young children chasing butterflies beneath the hydrangeas, their delighted giggles bright against the quiet. Ahead lies the open lawn, its edges lined with low benches and weathered statues. You step onto the grass, your shoes leaving faint impressions. A young couple sits on a nearby bench, sharing a quiet conversation beneath the shade of a lime tree. You offer them a polite smile as you pass, then continue toward the garden's far edge, where the city begins once more. The tops of Bath's honeystone buildings peak above the trees, and you feel the slow return to civilization. The sound of horses and carriages drifts faintly from the streets beyond. The garden gate appears ahead, and as you approach you run your hand briefly along its iron bars, cool and smooth beneath your gloves. You step out onto the cobbled pavement, and the world shifts again. Gone is the hush of the garden. Now the street hums with quiet motion. Carriages roll by, Gentlemen pass in conversation, and shopkeepers lean out of open doorways to greet familiar faces. You begin walking toward the assembly rooms, your shoes clicking softly on the stone. The streets are bustling now with late afternoon activity. A coach clatters by on its way downhill, polished brass lamps gleaming in the sunlight. Nearby, a cluster of young ladies in pastel pelisses and wide-brimmed bonnets stroll arm in arm, their voices light and animated. One points at a shop window displaying embroidered reticules, and the others lean closer with interest. On the opposite side of the street, a man pauses to adjust his cravat in a polished shop mirror before stepping confidently onward. The scent of fresh bread lingers as you pass a bakery door ajar, its warmth spilling into the air. The assembly rooms rise ahead, grand and symmetrical, a cream-coloured structure of Palladian design with columns as tall as a man. Its stone gleams softly under the sun, while the windows glint like tiny mirrors. As you approach, a liveried doorman swings open the great wooden door, offering a slight bow as you enter the building's cool interior. Inside, your footsteps shift from stone to polished wood, muffled slightly by thick rugs. The entrance hall is wide and elegant, lit by a trio of chandeliers that catch every flicker of movement in their faceted glass. You remove your gloves and pass them, along with your reticule, to the attending maid at the cloak desk. A few others are arriving, ladies of similar standing nodding politely to one another as they hand off parasols or adjust their shawls. The scent inside is more refined than the street. Beeswax polish, a hint of lavender from someone's handkerchief, and the faintest trace of coal smoke from the upstairs fireplace. You ascend a short flight of steps and enter the tea room, a long chamber with high ceilings and a row of tall windows that open to the street below. Rows of chairs are arranged neatly in groups beside narrow tables, and on one side of the room a row of servers bustle about with trays of tea and neat slices of plum cake. You make your way to an empty table near the far end, beside a tall plant in a ceramic pot painted with blue cranes. From this position, you can see the full length of the room. Sunlight streams through the windows and lays dappled patterns on the parquet floor. The assembled guests chat in soft tones, gentle, rising laughter, the clink of china, the low murmur of polite society. The server approaches and offers you a cup of tea on a silver tray. You nod in thanks and lift the cup, feeling the warmth seep into your hands. The tea is fragrant and mild, with a slight floral note that lingers on the tongue. You sip slowly, allowing the moment to stretch, watching the play of afternoon light against the gilded trim of the cornices. On a table not far from yours, two older women are deep in conversation, one gesturing with a gloved hand while the other leans in, listening intently. Further down, a group of younger ladies sit with straight backs and folded hands, pausing only to whisper and glance sideways as a group of gentlemen enters the room. The men are dressed impeccably in dark coats, high collars, and starched linen. One carries a rolled newspaper, another a small pocketbook he keeps thumbing through distractedly. A few seats away, a woman fans herself slowly while listening to her companion discuss the recent gathering at Sydney Gardens. Her gown is of fine grey muslin, the fabric almost translucent where it catches the sun. You find yourself noting the intricacy of her lace trim and the tiny pearl buttons down the back. The room is a parade of fashion, refinement and quiet manoeuvring, a theatre of social conduct unfolding in slow, precise gestures. After your tea is finished, you rise and stroll toward the card room, a smaller and more dimly lit space down a short hallway. Here, the atmosphere is a little livelier. At one table, two older gentlemen and a lady play whist, their voices kept low but their eyes sharp with concentration. At another, a younger woman is learning the rules of a new game, her tutor explaining with patient precision as he arranges the cards. You move slowly through the room, pausing to admire the painted ceiling overhead, a classical motif, with soft blue skies and sweeping ivory drapes held aloft by cherubs. A breeze stirs the curtains at the tall window, and you find yourself momentarily distracted by the sight of a passing carriage below, its glossy black sides catching the sun. Returning to the main gallery, you make your way into the ballroom itself. Even in daylight, the room impresses. Vast, elegant, with a high, barrel-vaulted ceiling and chandeliers that dangle like great icy blooms. The floor is freshly polished, and its long stretch of parquet invites you to imagine it filled with dancers, gowns swirling, boots gliding. At one end of the room, a trio of musicians is rehearsing quietly, a violinist, a harpist, and a small pianoforte. You find a seat near one of the tall arched windows and settle into it with care. Outside, the shadows have begun to lengthen slightly, but the light still glows golden, rich and warm. Below, a coach waits outside, its driver idling with the reins slack in hand. A dog trots across the street, tail wagging lazily. Inside, conversation drifts lazily across the chamber. A pair of girls near the musicians are speaking in hushed tones, heads bent close, likely discussing dance partners or news from earlier in the week. You half listen to the rising and falling rhythms of their words, enjoying the peace of the moment. There's something timeless about the room, the stillness, the gentle notes of music, the faded grandeur of it all. Eventually you rise and walk once more through the long corridor, nodding politely to those you pass. Back in the tea room, the plates have been cleared and the guests are beginning to depart, some on foot, others stepping lightly into waiting carriages outside. You collect your gloves and reticule from the cloak maid, slipping them on as you descend the steps. Outside, the sunlight has softened, casting the buildings in golden hues. You breathe in the air, fresher now, with a cooler edge to it. A few carriages roll past. A couple stands in quiet conversation on the steps of a nearby apothecary. You begin your walk once more, your destination not urgent, your pace unhurried. You pass a row of tall Georgian townhouses, their windows wide and tidy, fan lights above each door catching the fading light. A cat slinks along a low wall, disappearing through an iron gate. Somewhere further down the street a church bell tolls the hour. You continue past the Royal Crescent, its sweeping curve commanding and graceful. A few others walk here too, elderly men with walking sticks, children with nursemaids, and ladies strolling with books tucked under their arms. You begin your slow descent toward the baths themselves, drawn by the promise of warmth. The streets curve gently downward as you leave the airy heights of the upper town and stroll toward the heart of the city. The paving stones are smoother here, worn by centuries of footsteps, and the buildings closer together, tall Georgian façades with white-trimmed windows and wrought-iron balconies. The sound of your footsteps joins the steady rhythm of carriage wheels and distant chiming bells. As you near the baths, a gentle steam seems to rise faintly in the cool air, promising mineral warmth and tranquil restoration. Passing under a stone arch, you emerge into a small square. The baths stand before you, stately and time-worn, the honey-coloured stone glinting in the late light. Ionic columns support a grand portico, and below a shallow pool ripples quietly behind iron gates. A few people mill about the courtyard, some speaking softly in groups, others seated alone on benches. A man in a tri-cornered hat is reading a pamphlet about the healing properties of the waters, and a nursemaid chases a small child who has wandered too close to the edge of a fountain. You enter the building through a heavy wooden door that creaks faintly on its hinges. Inside, the air is warmer and carries a mineral scent, briny, faintly metallic, yet oddly comforting. Your footsteps echo softly against the stone floors as you pass through a vaulted corridor lined with carved niches and ancient Roman fragments set into the walls. A plaque proclaims the ancient origins of the springs, while above you, a clerestory window allows golden light to spill across the tiled floor. A matron in pale grey greets you at the entrance to the changing rooms. You hand over your outer garments and receive in return a soft robe and slippers, the cotton faintly scented with lavender. You step into a small chamber, lined with hooks and benches, where you remove your day's attire and wrap yourself carefully. Everything here is slower, hushed, as if time has thickened. You pass through a second archway and enter the bathing hall. The room is vast, built in the classical style, with tall windows that filter in afternoon light and columns that rise majestically from the stone floor. In the centre lies the great bath, its surface shimmering faintly, pale steam curling upward in lazy spirals. The water is the colour of tea with cream, opaque and slightly mysterious. It laps gently against the stone edges, stirred by movement, but never turbulent. There are a few other bathers, women wrapped in modest white shifts, their hair pinned neatly up, some seated on the broad steps descending into the water, others wading quietly through the deeper end. No one speaks loudly here. The air is filled with the sound of water, lapping, dripping, rippling, and the occasional rustle of cloth. You descend the steps slowly, the warmth seeping into your bones as your feet touch the water. A sigh escapes you without thinking. The heat is perfect, penetrating and soft, not scorching, but all-enveloping. You lower yourself further until you're seated on one of the submerged ledges, the water rising to your shoulders. Around you, the room is quiet. Light shifts across the surface of the bath, catching on droplets and making the walls seem to glow faintly. You breathe slowly, the air humid and soft. With each moment, the tension of the day seems to melt from your limbs. You close your eyes briefly, allowing the warmth to settle deep into your joints, your muscles loosening like silk unfurling. When you open your eyes again, everything feels slower. Time flows differently here. A bather passes in front of you, ripples trailing behind her. She nods politely, and you return the gesture. Nearby, a woman leans back against the side of the bath, her eyes half closed, a faint smile on her lips. Her friend speaks softly to her, pointing toward the columns, perhaps discussing their age or style. You glance upward at the stone above, marvelling at the skill it must have taken to carve it so precisely, so long ago. Eventually you move to the side of the pool and rest your back against the warm stone edge. The heat rises gently into your spine, and you let your hands drift across the surface of the water, watching the small rings spread outward. A maid enters with a tray of folded towels and glass cups. Behind her, an older woman arrives, aided by a cane, and accompanied by her daughter, who helps her down the steps. The older woman's face carries a look of relief as she settles into the bath, her fingers flexing slowly in the warm water. After some time, you rise from the bath, water sluicing from your shift as you make your way up the steps. A light mist curls around your ankles. You wrap yourself in a towel handed to you by the attendant and make your way to the adjoining chamber, the pump room. Here the atmosphere is brighter. A series of arched windows let in light from the square outside, and the soft murmur of conversation fills the space. A fountain at the far end issues a thin trickle of steaming water into a basin, where visitors line up to receive small glasses of the spring water. The mineral-rich liquid is known for its bitterness, yet many claim it possesses healing properties. You accept a glass and take a tentative sip. The taste is metallic and earthy, like stone steeped in warm rainwater. Not pleasant, but strangely invigorating. Around you, others sip with mixed expressions, some grimacing, some nodding approvingly. A gentleman nearby remarks that it is his 4th visit this week, and that his joints have never felt better. You sit at a small table near a potted palm, sipping slowly. The domed ceiling above is painted with faded frescoes, and musicians in the corner softly play a minuet on violin and harp. The gentle strains of music blend with the murmur of conversation, and the occasional clink of glassware. You lean back and let the warmth of the bath and the strangeness of the water settle within you. After a while you rise and return your empty glass. You collect your belongings and change back into your day dress, your skin still tingling slightly from the mineral soak. You pin your hair neatly once more, adjust your gloves, and step outside into the golden light. The city seems quieter now, more serene. Your limbs are light, your thoughts drifting. The Roman baths stand tall behind you, their ancient stones now cast in warm hues as the sun begins its slow descent behind the western hills. You make your way down a smaller side street where lamplighters begin their evening rounds. The scent of roasting chestnuts drifts from a nearby cart, and you pause for a moment to watch a child beg for one. A group of ladies in dark cloaks hurry past on their way to supper, their footsteps quick and purposeful. Somewhere above, a window creaks open, and the faint sound of piano music trickles out. You stroll on, turning toward the river. The path winds gently down toward the Avon, where the water moves slowly, catching the soft light of the early evening. The sky is washed in pale pinks and golds now, and the shadows of the buildings stretch long across the cobbled streets. A crisp, breeze lifts the hem of your skirts and carries the scent of damp stone and distant chimney smoke. The city hums with the quieter tones of the approaching evening. Footsteps echo fainter. The bustle of the shops has hushed. The trees lining the riverbank sway slightly as you reach the gravel walk beside the water. The river, wide and calm, reflects the soft movement of clouds above. You pause for a moment by the low stone wall and lean slightly over to watch a cluster of ducks bob in the current. The splash of their wings and the quiet quack of one particularly opinionated bird brings a faint smile to your lips. A few figures walk ahead, some in pairs, others alone, most wrapped against the cool. A gentleman tips his hat as he passes, and a little further along 2 women walk arm in arm, their bonnets tilted toward one another as they speak softly. Across the river, the spire of St. Michael's rises into the sky, framed by evening haze. The bells chime faintly from the city centre, and the sound blends gently with the rustle of leaves overhead. As you walk, the noises of the city dim behind you. The footpath becomes quieter, bordered by grassy banks and trimmed hedges, and you're able to hear the gentle splash of the river's current more clearly. The fading sun glints on the ripples, turning them gold, then silver, then dark blue. The wind carries the occasional murmur of voices and the creak of carriage wheels on distant roads. Soon the path slopes gently upward again, leading you back into the city's embrace. You turn away from the water and make your way up a wide avenue flanked by elegant stone buildings, their façades lit softly by the golden light. Windows flicker with lamplight inside, casting rectangular pools of orange onto the pavements. The scent of fresh bread lingers briefly as you pass a bakery shuttering for the evening, and a cat stretches out lazily in a doorway basking in the fading warmth. Your steps lead you toward the Royal Crescent, that sweeping arc of Georgian houses so proud in their symmetry. You have seen it many times, and yet the sight always arrests you. The curve of the terrace is stately and perfect, a half-moon of limestone gleaming in the low sun. It sits high above the lower town, looking down across the green lawns and open sky like a theatre set frozen in time. You approach the grassy expanse before the crescent, pausing to admire the view. Below, the hills soften into dusk, mist collecting gently along their lower folds. Children are still playing on the lawn, tossing a ball, rolling down the gentle slopes in pairs, giggling freely. A nursemaid claps her hands and calls one of them back, and a dog races happily after a twig thrown by its owner. You take a slow turn around the perimeter, your footsteps muffled by the soft grass. The stone of the crescent is warm and golden, each house identical in form but made unique by details. A wrought iron railing here, a planter of lavender there, a bowed curtain or flickering candelabra within. One window stands open, and you can hear the sound of a piano drifting into the open air, a gentle meandering melody that rises and falls like breath. A group of visitors stands near the centre of the curve, gesturing and pointing toward the far end, where the lawn drops away. One of them holds a sketchbook, trying to capture the lines and light. Another woman stands alone at the edge of the path, watching the horizon as the last sliver of sun slips beneath the hills. Her hands are folded in front of her, and though you pass near her, she does not move. After a time, you find a bench facing the crescent and settle there. The stone beneath you is cool, and you smooth your skirts as you sit. The air is quieter now, touched by the coolness that evening brings. A lamplighter appears, his ladder slung over his shoulder, and he moves from post to post, kindling the lamps one by one. Each flame flickers to life, casting a small golden glow against the falling blue of the sky. You sit for a while, watching the lamps blink on, watching the sky darken, watching people drift home. The city, once so loud and active, is now settling into something gentler. A carriage rolls by, its wheels muffled against the road. A couple walks hand in hand along the edge of the green, speaking in low voices. The piano music has stopped. When you finally rise from the bench, the world feels softer, as if cushioned in layers of dusk and lamp glow. You turn back toward the city centre, your footsteps light on the gravel. The tall houses seem to shimmer faintly in the warm light. You pass a fountain, where a bird perches on the rim, and beyond that, a quiet row of shops with shuttered windows. You begin to make your way down Gay Street, where the buildings are stately and close together, each doorway framed with pilasters and fan lights. The gas lamps above cast long shadows across the path. The windows glow with lamplight and candlelight alike, silhouettes drifting across the drawn curtains, gentle, domestic scenes flickering behind glass. As you near the bottom of the street, the assembly rooms rise in the distance. You can see figures gathering in the entranceway, cloaks draped across shoulders, gloves adjusting, fans flicking open and closed. The faint sound of music reaches your ears, strings tuning, a murmur of anticipation. A carriage pulls up, and a footman steps down, opening the door for two ladies in dark gowns edged with silk. Laughter spills out from the hall before the doors swing shut again. You pause for a moment just beyond the threshold of it all, just far enough to watch. The lights, the sounds, the anticipation of the evening yet to unfold. There is a sense of rhythm, of pageantry, of something shared. And for a moment, you're both outside of it and deeply within it. You turn the corner quietly, heading instead toward the gardens behind the building. The trees are shadowed now, their leaves rustling softly in the rising wind. A path winds ahead through a narrow lane, lit by occasional lamplight and lined with ivy-covered walls. The garden path is quiet as you follow it toward the edge of town, the tall hedgerows gently stirring in the evening air. It winds beneath a canopy of low, arching branches, the leaves brushing one another with the softest of sighs. A few scattered lanterns, hung from hooks along the path, spill gentle pools of yellow light onto the gravel, creating pockets of glow between long stretches of dusk. The stones crunch softly beneath your shoes as you walk, unhurried, guided more by rhythm than direction. The sounds of the assembly rooms behind you have faded into little more than memory, replaced by the whisper of the wind through ivy and the distant hoot of an owl. The hedgerows on either side are high enough to create the feeling of a private corridor, separating this narrow walkway from the rest of the city. You pass clusters of lilac and honeysuckle that have crept out through the tangle of leaves, their scent lingering warmly in the air. Small garden gates appear occasionally, each one slightly different, some painted pale blue, others in dark wood, one nearly hidden behind a curtain of climbing roses. As you continue, you spot a bench tucked in a quiet alcove between two laurel trees. It's empty, shadowed, with moss growing faintly along its edges. You pause only briefly, your hand brushing the worn wood, before moving on. The night is cool but not cold, and the stillness of the path is soothing. There is no one else here now, or if there is, they're hidden in the dark folds of the hedgerows, content with their own silence. Further along, the trees begin to open up, revealing a wider space, a small private garden, surrounded on all sides by wrought iron fencing. You step through the open gate and into the centre, where stone paths crisscross through neat flower beds, and a small fountain trickles at the heart of it all. You take a turn around the perimeter, walking slowly, passing under wooden arches wound with dormant wisteria vines. The air smells of earth and fallen leaves, with a trace of something faintly metallic from the fountain. You take a seat on a low stone wall beside the fountain. Its water falls in steady drops from a small spout into the shallow basin, the ripples catching reflections of the lanterns overhead. It's the kind of sound that sinks into you, the sort that might keep you company without asking for conversation. You let yourself sit for a while, letting time stretch out like a ribbon in your lap. Above, the skies are velvet blue, deepening with each passing moment. A few stars blink faintly to life, scattered between long wisps of cloud. The moon has not yet risen, but its light begins to show along the edges of the rooftops in the distance, casting the city's silhouette in soft silver. Eventually you rise again and take the path that leads out of the garden and farther along the edge of town. The lights of the city are fewer here, replaced by the steady glow of a lamplight spilling from upper windows and the occasional flicker of a hearth fire seen through thin curtains. The air feels different here, cleaner, cooler, touched by the faint scent of cut grass and distant fields. You come upon a stone bridge arched over a narrow stream, a tributary that feeds the Avon. You pause at its centre and lean against the railing. The water below reflects the moon now, casting it in pieces across the ripples. Insects skim its surface. A fox appears briefly on the far bank, eyes glinting as it watches you before slipping into the underbrush. The path bends again, leading you between two walls lined with moss. Your footsteps echo gently now, muted by the close stone and soft earth. This passage feels older somehow, like a route taken for centuries. You imagine other shoes on this same path, other nights, other evenings, other quiet walks by flickering lamplight. The thought is comforting. You're a quiet figure in a line of many. The walls give way at last to an overlook, where a balustrade separates you from a sharp drop down into the fields below. You step to it and rest your hands on the cool stone. Before you, the countryside stretches out into a patchwork of dark and light. Hills dotted with trees and hedgerows like lace against the landscape. Far off, a single farmhouse glows like an ember. You stand there for a long while, listening to nothing but wind and water and the occasional rustle of wings through trees. The city behind you seems paused, resting, breathing slowly as it eases into night. There is peace here, not dramatic or showy, just the peace that comes when the day ends and nothing else is required. When you turn to go, the sky has changed again. The stars are clearer now, and the moon is fully risen, casting silver light across the path. The stones beneath your feet glisten faintly. You retrace your steps slowly, passing again through the garden, now entirely empty, the fountain quiet in its own rhythm. You walk back along the corridor of hedges, your shadow stretched long in front of you. As the assembly rooms rise once more in the distance, you see carriages beginning to leave, their lanterns bobbing gently in the dark. Guests climb aboard, cloaked and laughing, their faces flushed from dancing and wine. You do not move toward them. Instead, you turn toward a side street, narrower and quieter, where the shadows are deep and the houses close. The scent of coal smoke lingers here, and the light from the street lamps glows through the fog in a halo. There's something quiet and secretive about these alleys. Not frightening, but closed off, tucked away. You follow them with care, listening to the gentle rhythm of your footsteps and the occasional chime of a distant clock tower marking the hour. Eventually the street opens into a courtyard, empty and echoing, framed by shuttered shops and tall townhouses. A cat watches you from a window ledge before slinking away into the night. You step into the stillness, letting it wrap around you like a shawl. The air inside is still and pleasantly warm, carrying the faint scent of beeswax polish, rosewater, and the last traces of supper from earlier in the evening. Your footsteps land gently on the runner rug that stretches along the hall, and the soft glow of the sconces set along the walls guides your path. A nearby clock ticks rhythmically, measured, steady, comforting. The maid must have passed through recently. Your gloves and shawl are already neatly placed on the small hall table beside a vase of fresh greenery, and your slippers are waiting at the foot of the staircase. You unfasten your cloak slowly, your fingers tired, and drape it over the waiting hook. A sense of quiet contentment begins to settle over you. The city is far away now, its noises, its guests, its movement. Here, there is just the hush of evening and the promise of rest. You climb the stairs slowly, one hand trailing along the polished rail. Each step creaks faintly beneath your weight, and your skirts rustle softly as they sweep the treads. Halfway up, you pause at the landing window to glance out. The moon casts a wide net of light across the neighbouring rooftops, silvering the slates and chimneys. All is still. A single lamp burns in a window across the square. Your bedchamber door is open, as it always is this time of night. The room glows in candlelight, a fire flickering gently in the grate, its crackle low and even. The bed has been turned down, the coverlet neatly folded, a warming pan likely having done its work long before you arrived. A small tray sits beside your dressing table, holding a teacup of chamomile and a pair of lavender-scented linen cloths. You begin the slow process of undressing, moving methodically and without rush. Hooks, ribbons, ties, each comes undone with quiet ease, your fingers practiced after years of repetition. You fold your garments and place them in the basket set just inside the wardrobe, then don your nightdress, soft cotton edged with delicate lace, the hem grazing the tops of your feet. The fabric feels cool and light against your skin. Your maid knocks gently once, soft, barely audible, then enters with a quiet curtsy, carrying a basin of warm water and a folded cloth. She sets them on the washstand without a word, as is customary, then leaves with a final glance and closes the door behind her. You take your time with your ablutions, dipping the cloth into the water and pressing it to your face, your neck, your hands. The warmth soothes, the lavender calms. Once clean and settled, you move to your dressing table. The candle there casts a golden glow over the surface. Your brush, your comb, a few silver trinkets. You draw the brush slowly through your hair, letting the repetition lull your thoughts into stillness. Outside, the occasional creak of a carriage wheel or a distant bark reminds you that the city still turns, even as you prepare to leave it behind for the night. When your hair is braided and tied with a ribbon, you snuff one of the candles and move slowly around the room, checking the windows, already latched, and the hearth, still glowing low. The embers will burn a while yet, enough to take the chill from the air. You lower the lamp wick just slightly, allowing the room to dim into a state of rest. Then you step over to the window. You pull the curtain back gently and peer out over the square. The trees below shift slightly in the wind, their leaves catching the moonlight. The city sleeps. The street lamps glow like amber beads strung along the paving stones. You trace their path with your eyes until it disappears into shadow. Somewhere far off, you imagine, someone else is looking out their own window, perhaps thinking of the same things, of the day that was, of the peace that comes after. You close the curtain softly and move to your bed. The mattress dips slightly beneath you as you settle in. The sheets cool at first, but gradually warming to your shape. You draw the blankets over you and nestle into the pillows, each one plumped and waiting. Your body sinks into the softness, the stillness. All movement fades. All sound grows distant. The fire crackles. The clock ticks. The house breathes quietly around you. Your eyes begin to close. In this final moment of the day, you reflect, not in thoughts exactly, but in sensations, the touch of fine linen, the scent of lavender, the warmth of tea and fire and home, the weight of sleep slowly spreading through limbs and breath and bones. You do not resist it. There is no need. You let yourself drift, and as you do, the day falls away. Thank you for joining me on this gentle Georgian reverie. May its tranquil charms lull you toward peaceful rest. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.